We're gonna miss you, Sai. Me, not just me. This entire fandom is gonna miss you. For those of you who don't know, Mark Merlino, also known as Sable, to people who knew him more personally, he, for the last week, or last weeks, has been in the hospital because of a stroke he had towards the end of last year. About a week ago, we got the news that, lo and behold, things weren't going super well. He had a GoFundMe set up to help pay for what were going to be very high medical bills, and then the news came. He was only going to have a few months at most. And so those funds were then going to be spent on hospice care. That was a week ago. A couple days ago, months turned into weeks, and then weeks turned into days. I have not seen another update, so as far as I'm aware, he's still holding on. But there's a good chance that even as I'm recording this, or by the time it goes up, he's no longer going to be with us. So I don't know if he'll get the chance to see this or not, but I still kind of want to address it to both him personally, but the fandom as a whole. Merlino is passing away from cancer, if I remember right. For those of you who don't know who Merlino was, he is somebody who was very dear to me. Maybe not, I don't know if we were quite friends, but we were at least acquaintances. I had met him several times, and both in VR chat and IRL. But Merlino was a very special and important individual to this community. He and his partner Rod O'Reilly, who is still around and in good health and with him in his final moments, those two are very important names in fandom history. Not only were they among the handful who basically got the fandom off the ground, ignited it in the first place, they were also responsible for the first furry convention conference way back in 1990, or actually in 89, I believe. And then, ever since then, they've also been huge names in terms of not just fandom history, but helping keep it alive. Whether it was the conference archive, whether it was their home, the Prancing Skill Tear. It's like a living library of old furry media, both in the fandom and out. Once a month, they would come and invite people to come see their little abode in the middle of Los Angeles area. They were big names, and not just in history, but also in the historian space. Of the friends I know in the historian community, or whatever you would call it, they have been some of the most publicly and popularly active members, whether it was them helping out with Ash Coyote's documentary, or answering some of my questions about like the skilled tears and stuff. They've done a lot. They're right up there with people like Joe Strike, Ash, and others, my mind's kind of drawing a blank right now. But there's so much they've done for this community. Not just back in their heyday, but in recent years. They hosted their panels at the cons. And I don't know if the name Mark Merlino or Sable is going to mean a lot to many of you, or even the whole fandom at that point, but he was a very special part of this community. And him moving on is rough, especially for us who, want to make sure history is still told, still documented as we move on to the next generation of furries. He wasn't the first to go. Honestly, Fred Patton, the late Fred Patton, who I believe passed away in 2018, he was a big historian, not just for the furry fandom, but for comic books and other things too. He was probably more historian than any of us. That man was a legend. And so is Merlino in his own way. I really don't know how to process this kind of news. It's something, when I got into the fandom and when I got into being a historian too, I kind of knew these kind of days would come. There's people that I grew up watching in the fandom that, I realized they're getting older, and some of them are pretty old. Merlino and O'Reilly are just a couple examples. People like Kage, whether you like him or hate him, some of the old, like from like the Furry Music Cafe days, Kama, Jumpy, some musicians I absolutely adored. There's a lot of great people in this fandom. I hope I get to meet at one point or another, but it's kind of hard because we all go at one point or another, and that's just part of the process, I guess. It's just part of the cycle of life. As somebody who wants to, kind of carry that torch forward, help keep fandom history alive, help document it in the new eras and the old. It's just something they kind of got to accept, but the impact, the influence of this man on the fandom, I don't want it to be forgotten. Everybody should know the name Merlino. Anybody who's hard enough into the furry community that they, own a suit, commission art, go to cons, I think he's a name people should know. Even if it's just in the back of their head. It's going to be weird going forward. It really is weird because, the fandom really isn't that old. Furry, arguably, depending on who you ask, I'd say is 40 years old now. Since, I think it was Raur Brazel debuted in 84. Fandom's only about 40 years old. People who were furries then, a lot of them are still around now, but we're kind of at that point where, as it's been told to me, the old guard isn't going to be around too much longer, and this just kind of hits that really close to home for me. Merlino, Rod, if you guys ever end up watching this or seeing this, I just want you to know that I really appreciate, and I want to speak on behalf of the fandom, that we really appreciate what you've done for the community, both in its infancy and in its later years. You guys have done so much for this community, and we owe you a lot of respect for that. I know personally I've been prone to mistakes in the past, and I know I don't have a flawless track record, but I really do want to just tell the most straight version of fandom history as I can. I used to joke when I started on YouTube that I was the fandom's youngest historian. I don't really know if that was true or not at the time, but I always saw that, at least in the public facing, a lot of the historians were really just the gray muzzles. And I mean, of course, now we have people like Ash and my friend Taryn and all the people at WikiFur, but there's only so many people. I really wanted to try and carry this torch forward. I mean, obviously historian's not for everybody, but For those of you who are interested in fandom history, I think it's kind of our duty to pick up the torch, carry it forward, make sure the work they've started is not left behind. It doesn't help that a lot of drama these days is so swept up. A lot of history these days is so swept up in drama, and there's some people, who really only want to talk about it to the extent of commentating on drama and active going-ons or retroactive pieces on old drama from, what are we up to 7-8 years ago now. There's not a lot of people who just, I guess interested in history itself. There's the good, there's the bad, there's the ugly, there's the beautiful. It's just all there. Merlino, you've left a very strong community on this planet. I'm sure you probably don't want to think of yourself as responsible for such a huge, cultural impact, but whether you like it or not, you and the other people from your time, you started all of this. This world I'm sitting in right now, it was first place I met Merlino in VRChat, actually. Sovereign's Chill World. Rod, I wish you strength in the coming days, months, years, because this is probably going to be harder on you than anybody else. And who's somebody who's lost pretty early in their youth, I know the bitter feeling a little bit too well. I just hope those close to you can give you the strength you need, and may you find peace and solace in the loving arms of those around you. This wasn't a scripted video. This was just me kind of rambling. But honestly, I kind of just wanted to dump my emotions out there, just as they are, because as sad as it is, and as tragic as it is, this day was always going to come. Many more like it in the future. Even I, one day, hopefully when I'm old and gray muzzle myself, everybody will have to move on too. It's just part of life, and it sucks, but unfortunately that's the world we live in. It's also an important moment. Let's not forget Merlino, but we'll also cherish the impact you've left on this community that you've helped create and nurture. Here's to the years ahead. Rest in peace, Sai. We'll miss you, but we won't forget you.